Chad McEvoy joins me now. Chad is running as a Democrat for the New York Assembly in the 101st District. He's challenging Republican incumbent Brian Miller. And Chad, welcome to WIOX. It's very likely that most of our listeners don't know very much about you, so let's begin this way, with you telling us about yourself.
I live on 60 acres in Westford, New York, which is a part of the 101st District. I've been here in upstate New York for about 7 years. I love it up here. It's beautiful. I'm a tech project manager, so software development and database analysis project management. I've mostly focused my career on working for large national nonprofits like the American Red Cross and Heifer International and several others. Worked on projects for Google and for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, for example. But I have a keen interest in politics and policy. I have a degree in public policy from Johns Hopkins University, and I'm looking to apply that to make a difference here in rural and small town parts of the upstate New York.
So if you're elected, what would you like to accomplish in the legislature?
I think that I can produce more for this region than the incumbent because I am a Democrat, honestly, because I'll be working within the majority, in Albany. I'll have better opportunities to get on committees and get things done with legislation that will represent rural and small town voices in the majority, which are often left out of the majority. I think that's the value proposition that I think I bring to this race in a large part. And one of my key issues I'd like to focus on beyond that is bringing real broadband high-speed internet to the area in order to improve the economy, improve our access to information, improve skills development within the region, and potentially, keep the college kids that go off to school, keep them coming back afterwards, and attract people to the area that will bring high-paying jobs here where they're remote working.
Every candidate that I've talked to for the last 5 years has said exactly the same thing that you just said, that if they're elected to whatever office, fill in the blank,
yeah.
Whether it's Congress, whether it's the Assembly, whether it's the state Senate or anything else, they're going to bring broadband and it would be universally available for the people in their district. It hasn't happened.
Yeah.
Why should people believe that you will be able to accomplish that?
Well, I'm making it almost the primary piece of my campaign because
I want to hear nuts and bolts. I don't want to hear what you're going to do about it in your campaign. How are you going to get the legislature to appropriate money so you can string wires in this district?
Well, there's a lot of things I don't know about exactly how the politics works in this region, and I'm going to learn. I am an outsider, and the nuts and bolts of how these things happen are going to come together. I know how to manage things and get things done, and I believe I can figure it out. But I work on the internet all day long personally. It's the only way I'm able to make a living. And so to me, it is absolutely critical that we have it in this area, and I'm not going to stop until I get it done.
Again, you're talking about what the problem is. I would like to hear from you how you solve the problem. What are your skills that you're going to put into the assembly?
Well, one thing on the internet question I think that would be worth exploring is that I feel like there's companies that have near monopoly status over the information flow into our lives, and that they shouldn't get to cherry pick who they deliver that internet to. So we just need to find some way to potentially compel them to deliver it to everyone if they're going to be making be in a near monopoly status.
It really comes down to money.
Yeah.
If there's a concentration of people, they'll run the wires or the fiber, and if there's not a lot of people, it's expensive to run fiber, so there's no incentive for them to do it. They're going to lose money.
Well, unless we just make them do it, but through legislation. If you're going to provide information under essentially a monopoly status, then you should have to provide it to everyone.
New York State right now has $52 billion in backdoor borrowing. The New York State Constitution requires that if the state is going to borrow money, that it goes before the voters in a referendum. However, almost every time the state borrows money, they do it through the back door, avoiding the constitutional requirement, and they do it through state authorities like the Thruway Authority, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, the Dormitory Authority. There's dozens and dozens of authorities. Will you go along with that system that essentially violates the New York State Constitution?
Well, I don't support violating the Constitution, so I suppose not. We need to have money to pay for our services, and probably the best way to accomplish that is to grow the economy and grow the tax base, and that will be how we will accomplish that. And I don't think it makes sense probably to violate the Constitution in order to get things paid for.
The downstate economy is doing very well. New York City is wealthier and has more people than it's ever had in history, and the suburbs are doing very well. Upstate is not doing too well right now, or certainly many parts of it, including this district. What are you going to do to stimulate the economy? Other than broadband.
Yeah, other than broadband. I think we can, in this area, profit from potentially bringing and encouraging more green energy jobs up here. Community solar development projects and things of that ilk will help both balance the growth of our economy and protect the environment at the same time. We need to go down that route, not the route of unsustainable fossil fuel infrastructure. I also think it's fair, I think there's a perception up here that I feel like the city and the urban areas should probably subsidize a bit of upstate functioning, because they get great value from being part of this state in terms of the watershed for use in the city as well.
But New York City is already sending several $billions a year more to Albany than it gets back. And it'll be difficult to get the city to provide more money for upstate, especially given that it's generally acknowledged that the downstate lawmakers control the assembly. So let's move on to something else. If there's going to be economic development, the region needs more energy, and that means electricity and natural gas.
Well, the answer just simply can't be to increase fossil fuel infrastructure. It's dying off. It's going away over time. We can invest a bunch of money in it now, but it won't be there in the long run. We have to.
But it's not tax money that's being invested. It's private money.
Yeah. Well, regardless, it's also dangerous and potentially, an increased source of pollution, which we can't ignore our carbon footprint and all the other consequences.
So you're saying to the companies, we don't want you to go somewhere else?
I think we should pick and choose which companies we want, and we should want green energy jobs and green energy sustainable economy. And to your other question, I understand that it's difficult for someone to come into the assembly and really rabble-rouse and get huge things done, especially when it's already got a pretty strong majority of Democrats and a minority of Republicans. So what I'm offering is maybe not necessarily to reshape the assembly as a first term person that's been voted in, but to be able to get a little bit more action for this part of New York inside the majority than the incumbent can get while stuck in the minority, and in that ilk be able to represent rural and small-town voices within the majority.
Let me ask you about taxes. The current New York State budget is roughly $150 billion, and that works out to about $7,570 per person. Florida, a state that has roughly the same number of people as New York, spends $92 billion, about $4,550 per person. So, does New York spend too much, too little, or just about the right amount per person, meaning that the taxes have to stay about the same, or should they be raised or cut?
I'm going to have to get back to you with a strong answer on that.
All right, well, let's make
still formulating some of my policies.
Let's make it a simpler question. When it comes to taxes, what's your policy on that? What's your outlook? Do you think the state should cut taxes or raise taxes?
I think that there are bound to be efficiencies that can be realized and things that can be cut when you go through there and look. There's bound to be some things that are wasteful spending that we can cut from the system. But the attitude of just slashing taxes is going to increase the volume of the economy, I think, has been proven wrong, and that's not going to work. So we need to be able to have money to support schools and to improve technology access so that the economy can grow, so that there's more money to tax, so we can get into a positive cycle and not a downward spiral.
Right, a growing economy means more economic activity, more taxes.
Yeah,
right.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so is there anything that you are aware of that you would like to see cut?
I need a better answer to this question. This came up last time. I mean, I am an outsider of this stuff so far. I hope to get a lot better at doing these interviews over time.
We'll move on.
Okay.
So another job that you'll have if you get elected is you have to bring home the bacon. What kind of bacon do you want to bring home to your constituents?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of what I'm talking about with regards to representing, these small towns in the majority, and that potentially there's more of that type of thing that can be done when you're working in the majority. But honestly, the system of sort of like district patronage and bacon is not beautiful, right? It's not really the way to run a state. I would hope that we would all get together and vote. This may be naive. Get together and vote on common sense things that are to the greater benefit of the whole state. But it's likely that because the majority is made up mostly of urban and suburban voices, that people that live in places like we do aren't getting represented properly there. So maybe I can do something about that.
Chad, let me ask you about guns. Of course, firearms are a controversial subject in New York, and indeed it's controversial all around the nation, and opinion, of course, is divided. So what's your view on guns?
I own a gun. It's a family heirloom. It's a shotgun. I think I believe in the Second Amendment fully. I think there's definitely sane people can come together and find some common ground about what gun safety rules should be enacted that will work for everyone. And it's important to kind of think about the difference between how we perceive guns when you live in an urban area and how you perceive them when you live in the country. But that said, it seems pretty obvious to me that military-grade hardware does not need to be in the hands of children. So there's common sense gun safety things that can be done here, and without damaging the Second Amendment.
So would you support banning assault-style weapons?
Yeah, I think so. Lots of people will point out that hunting rifles are sometimes even more powerful than those assault-style rifles, but it's no accident that they're designed for close-quarters combat. The government buys them for that purpose. They've got features that enable, maximum ability to shoot people. There's sane middle ground here, and we've got to find it because this is just going to be a real problem in our country going forward. Just in conclusion, I'd love to put a call out there for anyone who might be interested in getting involved in the campaign. Just go to chad101.com. We're looking for volunteers up and down this long, skinny district, and we'd love your help.
Chad McEvoy. Chad is running as a Democrat for the New York Assembly in the 101st District, and he's challenging the Republican incumbent Brian Miller. Chad, thank you for coming on WIOX.